The lonely whistle of the train echoed across the vast prairie as it pulled away from Cottonwood Station, leaving behind a solitary figure standing amid a cloud of settling dust. 22-year-old Tabitha Jones clutched her worn leather valise with trembling fingers, her heart sinking as she watched her only connection to civilization disappear into the distance. The year was 1878, and she had traveled all the way from Boston to marry a man she'd never met, only to be abandoned at what was clearly the wrong station. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself, surveying the desolate landscape of eastern Colorado Territory. The station was little more than a wooden platform with a small shelter. No town was visible in any direction, only endless grass, scattered cottonwoods, and the distant silhouette of mountains to the west. Tabitha smoothed down her navy traveling dress, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The station master had departed hours ago, locking the small office before heading to what he'd called the real town some miles away. According to her agreement, she was to meet her future husband, Mr. Gerald Crawford, in a place called Silverdale. This forsaken outpost was certainly not it. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Tabitha felt the first real pangs of fear. Night would fall soon, and she was alone in unknown territory with no shelter, no food, and no prospects. The warm May day would soon give way to a chilly night, and her city clothes offered little protection against the elements. She was contemplating whether to break into the station office when the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her turn. A lone rider appeared, silhouetted against the setting sun. Tabitha stood frozen, uncertain whether to call out or hide. In Boston, she would have sought a policeman. Here in this wild land, she had no idea who to trust. The rider drew closer, and she could make out the shape of a man astride a chestnut mare. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, a dusty denim jacket, and had the weathered look of someone who spent his days under the open sky. "Evening, madam," he called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "Don't often see folks waiting at this stop. Last train's gone for the day." Tabitha squared her shoulders, summoning all her courage. "I believe I've been left at the wrong station. I'm supposed to be meeting someone in Silverdale." The rider pulled his horse to a stop a respectful distance away and dismounted with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. He pushed his hat back, revealing sun-bronzed features, keen blue eyes, and a face that, while not classically handsome, held a certain compelling quality. "Silverdale," he frowned. "That's nearly 40 miles north of here. This here's just a whistle stop for the cattle trains mostly." Tabitha felt her hopes crumble. 40 miles, but how could the conductor make such a mistake? "I showed him my ticket," the stranger approached cautiously as if sensing her distress. "May I see that ticket, Miss Jones?" "Tabitha Jones," she replied, fumbling in her reticule for the crumpled ticket. "And you are, sir?" "Adam Irving," he said, taking the ticket she extended. He studied it for a moment, his expression growing troubled. "This here ticket says Cottonwood Station clear as day, Miss Jones, not Silverdale." "That's impossible," Tabitha insisted, reaching for the ticket. She scanned the printed text and felt her stomach drop. He was right. But the letter. "My correspondence with Mr. Crawford specifically mentioned Silverdale," understanding dawned in Adam's eyes. "Crawford, Gerald Crawford." When she nodded, he let out a low whistle. "I think I see what happened here. Old Gerald moved on from Silverdale months ago after his mine played out. Word is he headed to Nevada to try his luck there." The full weight of her situation crashed down on Tabitha. She had spent nearly every penny she had on the train ticket, traveling across the country to marry a man who wasn't even there anymore. A man who hadn't bothered to inform her of his change in plans. "What am I to do now?" she whispered, more to herself than to Adam. Adam Irving studied the young woman before him. She was clearly Eastern, with her fine clothes and proper speech. Pretty too, with auburn hair escaping from beneath her fashionable hat and eyes the color of warm honey. But more than that, there was a determination in her bearing that impressed him. Many women would be in hysterics by now. "Well, Miss Jones," he said, making a decision, "you can't stay here. There's nothing at this stop but rattlesnakes and coyotes after dark." He gestured to the open country around them. My ranch is about an hour's ride from here. I can offer you shelter for the night, and tomorrow we can figure out your next steps." Tabitha hesitated, weighing her options. Going with a stranger was risky, but staying alone at the abandoned station was arguably more dangerous. "I assure you my intentions are honorable," Adam added, sensing her uncertainty. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins, lives at the ranch too. You'll be perfectly safe." After another moment's consideration, Tabitha nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Irving. I accept your kind offer." Adam helped her mount his horse, placing her valise in a saddlebag before swinging up behind her. It was improper, sitting this close to a man she'd just met, but propriety seemed a distant concern compared to survival. As they rode away from the station, Adam looked down at the woman whose life had just taken such an unexpected turn and found himself saying words he never thought would cross his lips. "You know, Miss Jones, maybe you're at the right place after all." The journey to Adam Irving's ranch passed in relative silence. Tabitha was acutely aware of his presence behind her, his arms reaching around to hold the reins, creating a protective barrier that both reassured and unsettled her. The vastness of the landscape stretched out around them, the last rays of sunlight painting the prairie grass in golden hues before darkness began to claim the land. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost despite herself. "That it is," Adam agreed, his deep voice close to her ear. "Different from Boston, I expect. Very different. Everything seems larger here, more open. That's what I love about it. Room to breathe, room to be." As they crested a gentle rise, Adam's ranch came into view in the valley below. It wasn't the crude cabin Tabitha had imagined, but a proper homestead. A two-story house built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around it, several outbuildings, corrals for livestock, and even what appeared to be a small orchard. A stream wound its way through the property, reflecting the last light of day. "Welcome to the Double I Ranch," Adam said, a note of pride in his voice. "Not what you were expecting, I confess it isn't," Tabitha admitted. "It's quite impressive, Mr. Irving." "Adam, please." Out here, formality doesn't last long. As they approached the house, a plump, gray-haired woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. Her expression shifted from curiosity to surprise as she registered Tabitha's presence. "Mrs. Wilkins," Adam called out as he guided his horse to a stop, "we have a guest in need of assistance." The woman nodded briskly. "I can see that. Well, don't just sit there, Adam Irving. Help the poor girl down and bring her inside. Supper's nearly ready and she looks half-starved." Adam dismounted and reached up to help Tabitha down. Her legs were stiff from the unaccustomed ride, and she stumbled slightly as her feet touched the ground. Adam's strong hands steadied her, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly shy under his gaze. Mrs. Wilkins bustled forward. "Come along, dear, let's get you settled," while Adam seized to his horse. "I'm Harriet Wilkins, housekeeper and cook, though this one," she jerked her thumb at Adam, "would be lost without me, and he knows it." Adam's smile transformed his face, softening the weathered lines and crinkling the corners of his eyes. "That I would, Mrs. Wilkins, that I would." Inside, the ranch house proved as surprising as its exterior. The main room was spacious, with polished wooden floors, comfortable furnishings, and bookshelves lining one wall. A large stone fireplace dominated another wall, while windows framed views of the ranch. It was rustic but undeniably civilized. "The bathroom's through there," Mrs. Wilkins explained, pointing to a door. "We've got indoor plumbing, thank the Lord. Adam spared no expense when he built this place. You can freshen up while I finish supper." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. You're very kind." The older woman patted her arm. "Any friend of Adam's is welcome here, though I must say he's never brought home a young lady before." "Oh, I'm not," Tabitha began, but Mrs. Wilkins was already heading back to the kitchen, humming to herself. After washing the travel dust from her face and hands, Tabitha found herself seated at a large oak dining table across from Adam, with Mrs. Wilkins bustling around them, serving a hearty stew, fresh bread, and vegetables that must have come from the kitchen garden she'd glimpsed outside. Over dinner, Tabitha explained her situation more fully, how she had responded to Mr. Crawford's advertisement for a bride in a Boston newspaper, their exchange of letters, and her decision to travel west after losing her position as a schoolteacher following her parents' deaths. "So you've never actually met this Crawford fellow?" Adam asked, his expression darkening. "No," Tabitha admitted. "It sounds foolish now, but it seemed like my best option at the time. Teaching positions are scarce and with no family left." "It's not foolish to seek a better life," Adam said gently. "Though Crawford's reputation wasn't the best even when he lived in Silverdale, perhaps it's a blessing you didn't find him." Mrs. Wilkins snorted. "A blessing indeed. That man couldn't keep a mining claim or a woman. Always chasing the next big strike, that one." "What will you do now, Miss Jones?" Adam asked. Tabitha set down her fork, considering. "I hardly know. I have very little money left. Perhaps I could find work in the nearest town. I am educated. I could teach or work as a clerk." "Silverdale's the nearest proper town," Adam explained, "but it's been in decline since the silver started running out. Don't know that you'd find suitable work there." "What about Riverbend?" Mrs. Wilkins suggested. "It's growing and they've been talking about building a proper school." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Riverbend's about 20 miles west. It started as a trading post but has grown considerably in the last few years. Good folks there. They might well need a teacher." Hope flickered in Tabitha's chest. "How would I get there?" "I could take you," Adam offered. "Day after tomorrow, perhaps. I need to check on the north pasture tomorrow, but after that I can spare the time." "You've already been so kind," Tabitha protested. "I couldn't impose further." "It's no imposition," Adam assured her. "Besides, I have business in Riverbend myself." After dinner, Mrs. Wilkins showed Tabitha to a guest room on the second floor, a comfortable space with a brass bed, patchwork quilt, and windows that would offer views of the mountains come morning. "Sleep well, dear," the housekeeper said, "and don't you worry. Things have a way of working out for the best." Left alone, Tabitha sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. Just that morning, she had been filled with nervous anticipation about meeting her future husband. Now that future had evaporated, leaving her adrift in an unfamiliar land. Yet, as she prepared for bed, Tabitha found herself thinking not of Gerald Crawford and what might have been, but of Adam Irving's kind blue eyes and the way his ranch had appeared in the sunset, like a haven in the wilderness. Perhaps Mrs. Wilkins was right. Perhaps things did have a way of working out. Dawn broke clear and golden over the Double I Ranch, bathing the bedroom in warm light that roused Tabitha from the deepest sleep she'd had in weeks. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar surroundings confusing her. Then memory returned the wrong station, the abandoned marriage plans, Adam Irving's unexpected rescue. She rose and dressed in one of her few remaining outfits, a simple blue cotton dress that had seen better days. After pinning her hair in a simple knot at the nape of her neck, she made her way downstairs, following the enticing aroma of coffee and breakfast. Mrs. Wilkins was alone in the kitchen, bustling between the stove and the table. "Good morning, dear. Sleep well, did you? You look much refreshed." "I did, thank you. The bed was most comfortable." Sit. Breakfast is nearly ready. Adam's been up since before dawn, checking on a new foal. He should be back shortly." True to Mrs. Wilkins' prediction, the back door opened just as she was setting plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits on the table. Adam entered, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. He'd clearly been working already, his shirt bearing traces of dust and his boots muddy, but he'd made an effort to wash up before coming inside. "Morning, ladies," he greeted them, his eyes lingering on Tabitha. "I trust you slept well, Miss Jones." "Very well, thank you." "And please call me Tabitha," a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Tabitha, then." Over breakfast, Adam explained more about his ranch, how he'd come west after the war between the states, worked as a cowhand until he'd saved enough to buy his own land, and slowly built the Double I into one of the more successful operations in the region. "It must have been very difficult starting from nothing," Tabitha observed. Adam's expression grew distant. "There were hard times, certainly. Years when I thought I'd lose everything to drought or disease or winter storms, but there's something about this land. It gets into your blood. Makes the struggle worthwhile." After breakfast, Adam excused himself to attend to his duties, and Mrs. Wilkins invited Tabitha to help her with household chores. Grateful for the chance to be useful, Tabitha spent the morning assisting with laundry, bread making, and tending to the kitchen garden. Around midday, Mrs. Wilkins insisted she take a break. "Go on, dear, have a look around the place. It's a fine day for a walk, and you've been cooped up helping an old woman all morning." "You're hardly old, Mrs. Wilkins," Tabitha protested with a smile, "but a walk does sound lovely." She found herself wandering toward the corral where several horses grazed peacefully. Beyond it, she could see Adam working with one of his ranch hands, the two men deep in conversation as they examined a section of fence. As if sensing her gaze, Adam looked up and raised a hand in greeting before excusing himself from his employee and walking toward her, exploring. He asked as he approached. "Mrs. Wilkins suggested I get some air. Your ranch is beautiful. Thank you. Would you like to see more of it? I need to check on some cattle in the south pasture. You could ride with me if you'd like." Tabitha hesitated. "I've never ridden a horse on my own before." Adam's expression was thoughtful. "The mare in the far corner, the dappled gray, that's Daisy. She's gentle as they come, perfect for a beginner." Before she knew it, Tabitha found herself atop Daisy, with Adam patiently instructing her on how to hold the reins, how to sit, and how to communicate with the horse. His teaching style was calm and reassuring, never making her feel inadequate for her lack of experience. "You're a natural," he encouraged as she guided Daisy in a slow circle around the corral. Ready to try the open range, though nervous, Tabitha nodded. The sense of independence she felt on horseback was exhilarating. They rode at a leisurely pace, with Adam pointing out features of the landscape and telling stories about the ranch's history. When they reached a rise overlooking a broad valley where cattle grazed, Adam suggested they rest for a while. "It's my favorite view on the property," he explained as they dismounted. "I come here to think sometimes." They sat side by side on a sun-warmed boulder, the horses grazing nearby. "May I ask you something, Adam?" Tabitha ventured after a comfortable silence. "Of course." "Why do you live out here, so far from town? Don't you get lonely?" Adam considered the question carefully. "I suppose I do at times, but I've never been one for crowds, and I have Mrs. Wilkins, my ranch hands during busy seasons, the occasional visitor." He glanced at her. "What about you? What made you decide to come west to marry a stranger?" Tabitha looked out over the valley, gathering her thoughts. "After my parents died, influenza took them both last winter. I found myself alone with few prospects. Teaching positions are scarce, especially for unmarried women my age. When I saw Mr. Crawford's advertisement," she shrugged, "it seemed like providence, a chance at a new life. And now I'm not sure what to think. Yesterday I was terrified, standing alone at that station. Today," she gestured at the panorama before them. "Today I can see the beauty in this place, the possibility." Adam's gaze was warm on her face. "There's always possibility in the West. That's why we're all here, isn't it? For the chance to become something new." The ride back to the ranch was companionable, with Tabitha growing more confident on horseback by the minute. By the time they returned, she was flushed with exertion and pleasure, her earlier worries temporarily forgotten. Mrs. Wilkins met them at the corral, her knowing eyes taking in their wind-blown appearance and bright expressions. "Had a nice ride, did you? Good. Now come in for some lemonade before you both perish of thirst." That evening after dinner, as Mrs. Wilkins retired early with a headache, Tabitha and Adam found themselves alone on the front porch, watching as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. The day's warmth lingered, making the evening pleasant enough to sit outside. "I've never seen so many stars," Tabitha remarked, gazing upward. "In Boston, the city lights obscure most of them." "One of the best things about country living," Adam agreed, "though I imagine there are advantages to city life as well. There are. Cultural events, libraries, shops." Tabitha sighed. "Though I find I don't miss them as much as I expected." Adam turned to study her profile in the fading light. "What do you miss then?" The question caught her off guard. "I suppose certainty, knowing what tomorrow will bring." "Ah," Adam nodded slowly. "That's one thing the West can't offer. Out here, nothing's certain except change." "Is that why you like it?" "Part of it. The challenge, the freedom." He paused. The chance to build something that's truly your own. As the last light faded from the sky, Tabitha felt a strange reluctance to end the evening. Tomorrow they would ride to Riverbend, and she would begin yet another new chapter. The thought filled her with an unexpected melancholy. "We should both get some rest," Adam said eventually, rising from his chair. "It's a fair ride to Riverbend tomorrow." "Yes, of course." Tabitha stood as well, smoothing her skirts. "Thank you for today, Adam, for the riding lesson and everything else." In the dim light from the windows, his expression was unreadable. "You're welcome, Tabitha. I enjoyed it too." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Tabitha found herself wondering what might have happened if her train had indeed taken her to Silverdale, if Gerald Crawford had been waiting as planned. Would she have found happiness as his wife? Or would she have traded one uncertain future for another, equally precarious one? For the first time since discovering her predicament, Tabitha found herself almost grateful for the twist of fate that had brought her to Cottonwood Station instead. Almost grateful to have met Adam Irving, with his quiet strength and kind eyes. Almost, but not quite ready to admit how quickly this rugged land and its inhabitants were claiming a place in her heart. Morning arrived with a flurry of activity, as preparations were made for the journey to Riverbend. Adam had arranged for them to travel by wagon rather than horseback, reasoning that it would be more comfortable for Tabitha and allow them to bring her valise easily. "It'll take longer," he explained as he harnessed 2 sturdy horses to the wagon, "but we should reach town by mid-afternoon." Mrs. Wilkins provided them with a basket of food for the journey and fussed over Tabitha like a mother hen. "Now you remember what I said about Riverbend. Ask for Martha Simmons at the general store. She knows everyone and everything. If there's work to be had, she'll know of it." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins, for everything," Tabitha said, impulsively embracing the older woman. Mrs. Wilkins patted her back. "You come back and visit us, you hear. This old house could use a young woman's touch more often." The journey to Riverbend passed pleasantly through rolling hills and valleys, with Adam pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the region's history. They stopped for lunch beside a clear stream, spreading Mrs. Wilkins' food on a blanket beneath the shade of a cottonwood tree. "Tell me about Riverbend," Tabitha requested as they ate. "What kind of place is it, growing?" Adam replied. "Started as just a trading post at a river crossing, but it's become something of a hub for the ranches and farms in the area. There's a hotel, a few shops, a church. No proper school yet, but there's talk of building one. And the people, good folks mostly, hardworking. The usual mix you find out here: former soldiers, European immigrants, Easterners looking for a fresh start. A few rough types, but the town's settling down as more families move in." As they continued their journey, the landscape gradually changed, with more signs of human habitation appearing: fenced fields, occasional farmhouses, and finally, a proper road leading toward a collection of buildings nestled in a valley where a river curved lazily through the landscape. "River Bend," Adam announced as they crested a hill overlooking the town. It was larger than Tabitha had expected, with perhaps 30 or 40 buildings arranged along a main street and several side streets. A church steeple rose above the other structures, and the glint of sunlight on water revealed the river that gave the town its name. "It's charming," she said, genuinely impressed. Adam guided the wagon down the hill and into town, nodding greetings to several people as they passed. He brought the wagon to a stop in front of a 2-story building with a sign proclaiming it the Riverbend Hotel. "We'll get you a room here first," he said, jumping down and coming around to help her descend. "Then we can see about making inquiries regarding work." The hotel lobby was modest but clean, with polished wooden floors and simple furnishings. A middle-aged woman with graying blonde hair looked up from behind the desk as they entered. "Adam Irving, as I live and breathe," she exclaimed. "Haven't seen you in town for an age. Hello, Mrs. Parker." "Been busy at the ranch." Adam turned to Tabitha. "This is Miss Tabitha Jones. She needs a room for a few nights while she explores opportunities in Riverbend." Mrs. Parker's curious gaze swept over Tabitha, taking in her travel-worn appearance and Boston-made dress. "Of course. Always happy to welcome newcomers. Any friend of Adam's is welcome here." After securing a room for Tabitha and arranging to have her valise brought up, Adam suggested they visit the general store to speak with Martha Simmons, as Mrs. Wilkins had recommended. The store was a treasure trove of goods, from practical necessities to small luxuries. A bell jangled as they entered, and a plump woman with lively eyes emerged from behind a fabric display. "Well, if it isn't Adam Irving," she greeted him warmly. "And who might this be?" Adam performed the introductions, explaining Tabitha's situation in broad strokes, that she was new to the area, a trained teacher looking for work, and temporarily staying in Riverbend while she determined her next steps. Martha Simmons listened with evident interest. "A teacher, you say?" "Well now, that is fortunate timing. The town council just voted last week to hire someone to start a proper school. They've been using the church for lessons, but with all the new families moving in, it's becoming inadequate." Tabitha's heart leapt. "Are they accepting applications?" "Better than that," Martha said with a conspiratorial smile. "The committee meets this very evening at the town hall to discuss candidates. My husband's on the committee. I could mention you to him." "That would be wonderful," Tabitha said, hardly daring to hope that her luck might be turning so quickly. "The meeting's at 7, Martha continued. "Why don't you come by? I'll introduce you to Henry and he can present you to the others." As they left the store, Tabitha could barely contain her excitement. "Can you believe it? A teaching position right when I need one. It seems too fortunate to be true." Adam smiled at her enthusiasm. The West can be like that. One day brings disaster, the next opportunity. They spent the remainder of the afternoon exploring Riverbend, with Adam showing her the church, the small building currently serving as a makeshift school, and other points of interest. They stopped for coffee at a small cafe, where several of the locals greeted Adam warmly and welcomed Tabitha to town. "You seem well liked here," she observed as they left the cafe. Adam shrugged. "I've been around long enough to know most folks. And I do business with many of them, sell beef to the hotel and cafe, buy supplies at the general store. Yet you choose to live so far from town. I value my independence." He glanced at her. "But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate company occasionally." As evening approached, they returned to the hotel, where Adam left Tabitha to rest and refresh herself before the town committee meeting. "I have some business to attend to," he explained, "but I'll meet you at the town hall at 6:45. Alone in her hotel room, Tabitha unpacked her valise and changed into her best dress, a modest lavender creation that had been fashionable in Boston 2 seasons ago. She pinned her hair more formally and added her mother's cameo brooch to her collar. First impressions mattered, especially when seeking employment. As promised, Adam was waiting when she arrived at the town hall, a substantial brick building that also housed the sheriff's office and courthouse. He had also changed clothes, she noticed, now wearing a clean white shirt, dark vest, and polished boots. "You look very nice," he said, his admiration evident in his gaze. "Thank you, I want to make a good impression." "You will." Martha Simmons met them at the entrance to the meeting room, where several men and women were already gathered around a large table. "Here she is," Martha announced. "The teacher I was telling you about, Henry." A portly man with mutton chop whiskers stepped forward. "Miss Jones, a pleasure. Martha tells me you have experience teaching. 3 years at the Thornfield Academy for Young Ladies in Boston," Tabitha confirmed. "I taught literature, history, mathematics, and basic sciences to girls aged 8 to 16. Henry's eyebrows rose appreciatively. "Impressive credentials." "We've been hoping to find someone with formal training. Most of our previous teachers have been well-meaning locals with limited education themselves." The meeting proceeded more favorably than Tabitha could have hoped. The committee members asked thoughtful questions about her teaching philosophy, experience, and expectations. By the end of the hour, it was clear that they were eager to secure her services. "The position pays $30 a month, with room and board included," Henry explained. "We've purchased the old Miller cabin for the teachers' use. It's small but comfortable, just on the edge of town. The school itself is still under construction, but should be completed within a month. Until then, classes would continue at the church. When would you need me to start?" Tabitha asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite her growing excitement. "Ideally, as soon as possible." Our current teacher, Mrs. Lawson, is expecting her fourth child and finding it increasingly difficult to manage the classroom. I would need a few days to settle in, but I could start next week, Tabitha offered. The committee members exchanged pleased glances. I believe we've found our teacher, Henry announced. Unless anyone has objections. When none were raised, he extended his hand to Tabitha. Welcome to Riverbend, Miss Jones. We're delighted to have you. Outside the town hall, Tabitha could barely contain her joy. I can't believe it. A position, a home, a fresh start all in one evening. Adam's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Congratulations, I knew they'd recognize your worth. They walked slowly back toward the hotel, the street quiet now as businesses closed for the night. Lanterns glowed in windows, and stars appeared overhead, brilliant against the darkening sky. Will you stay in town tonight? Tabitha asked suddenly. I had planned to, Adam replied. It's too late to start back to the ranch now. I have a room at the hotel. They reached the hotel steps and paused, neither seeming eager to end the evening. Would you care to sit for a while? Adam gestured to the porch chairs. It's a fine night. They settled into the chairs, listening to the distant sound of the river and the occasional whinny of horses from the livery stable down the street. What will you do tomorrow? Tabitha asked. Some business at the bank and general store, then back to the ranch. And you? Mr. Simmons offered to show me the school and the teacher's cabin in the morning. I thought I might purchase some necessities as well, since I'll be staying. Adam nodded, his expression unreadable in the dim light from the hotel windows. You'll do well here, Tabitha. It's a good town with good people. Thanks to you, she said softly. If you hadn't found me at that station, you'd have managed, Adam said with a small smile. You strike me as a woman who finds a way to overcome obstacles. Perhaps, but I'm grateful nonetheless. They fell silent, the night air cool around them. Tabitha found herself studying Adam's profile, noting the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. In just 2 days, this man had gone from stranger to what? Friend seemed too casual a term for the connection she felt. I should go in, she said eventually, though reluctantly. It's been a long day. Adam rose and offered his hand to help her up. When she stood, they were suddenly close, his height making her tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Tabitha, he began, then hesitated. I'm glad things have worked out for you here. Thank you for everything. His hand still held hers, warm and strong. For a breathless moment, she thought he might say something more, might even kiss her, but then he released her hand and stepped back. Good night, Tabitha. Sleep well. Good night, Adam. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Tabitha couldn't help feeling that something important had been left unsaid between them. And that tomorrow, when Adam Irving rode back to his ranch, he would take a small piece of her heart with him. Morning brought the bustling sounds of a town awakening, wagons rumbling down the street, shopkeepers opening their establishments, the distant ring of the blacksmith's hammer. Tabitha dressed with care, anticipating her tour of the school and cabin with Mr. Simmons. Breakfast was served in the hotel's small dining room, where she was surprised to find Adam already seated at a table. Good morning, he greeted her. I thought you might appreciate company for breakfast before your busy day begins. That's very kind of you. They shared a pleasant meal, discussing Tabitha's plans for the school and Adam's business in town. As they were finishing their coffee, Henry Simmons arrived. Good morning, Miss Jones, Mr. Irving. I trust you slept well. Ready to see your new home and workplace. Very ready, Tabitha assured him. Adam rose from his chair. If you'll excuse me, I have business at the bank. Tabitha, perhaps we could meet for lunch before I depart. Say noon at the cafe. I'd like that, she replied, oddly touched by his desire to see her once more before leaving. The tour with Henry Simmons proved informative and encouraging. The school building, though still under construction, was taking shape nicely, a substantial structure with large windows and space for up to 30 pupils. The teacher's cabin, while small, was clean and well-maintained, with a bedroom, living area, and small kitchen. Previous teachers had left behind basic furniture and household items, making it immediately habitable. It's perfect, Tabitha told Henry as they completed the tour. I can move in right away. Excellent. My wife has arranged for some of the ladies from church to help you settle in. They'll bring linens, cooking essentials, and the like. We want you to feel welcome here." By the time noon approached, Tabitha's head was spinning with information, introductions, and plans. She had met several mothers of prospective students, discussed curriculum with the current teacher, Mrs. Lawson, and begun a list of supplies she would need. The cafe was busy when she arrived, but Adam had secured a table by the window. He rose as she approached, pulling out her chair with an old-world courtesy that seemed at odds with his frontier appearance. "How was your morning?" he inquired once they were seated. "Wonderful. Everyone has been so kind and helpful. The school building is going to be lovely, and the cabin is charming." "I'm glad." He hesitated. "When do you plan to move in?" "Tomorrow, I think." "Mrs. Parker mentioned that the hotel is expecting a group of travelers on Friday, so I should vacate my room by then anyway." Their food arrived, hearty stew and fresh bread, and they ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. "Adam," Tabitha said eventually, setting down her spoon. "I want to thank you properly for all you've done. If not for your kindness, I don't know what would have become of me." He shook his head. "You give me too much credit. Anyone would have helped a lady in distress." "We both know that's not true, especially out here where life can be so harsh." Adam's blue eyes met her steadily. "Perhaps not everyone, but I like to think the best of people, just as you do. Will you?" Tabitha hesitated, then pressed on. "Will you visit Riverbend again soon?" Something flickered in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or pleasure. "I come to town every few weeks for supplies and banking, more often if there's need." "I would enjoy seeing you when you do," she said, feeling unexpectedly bold. "Perhaps you could tell me how Daisy is faring and Mrs. Wilkins." A slow smile spread across Adam's face, transforming his features. "I'd like that very much, Tabitha." All too soon, lunch was over and it was time for Adam to depart. They walked together to where his wagon was hitched outside the general store, now loaded with supplies for the ranch. "Well," he said, turning to face her, "this is goodbye for now." "For now," she agreed, surprised by the sudden tightness in her throat. Adam reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle. "Take care of yourself, Tabitha Jones. Riverbend is lucky to have you, and I'm lucky to have found Riverbend, thanks to you." He held her gaze for a long moment, then released her hand and climbed onto the wagon seat. With a tip of his hat and a flick of the reins, he was off, the wagon rolling down the street and eventually out of town. Tabitha watched until he was out of sight, a curious emptiness settling in her chest despite the excitement of her new position and the warm welcome she'd received from the townspeople. It was foolish, she told herself as she turned back toward the hotel. Foolish to feel this attachment to a man she'd known for barely 3 days. A man who lived 20 miles away and clearly valued his solitude. Yet as she prepared for her new life in Riverbend, thoughts of Adam Irving continued to linger at the edges of her mind, like a melody half-remembered but impossible to forget. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Tabitha settled into her new life in Riverbend. Moving into the teacher's cabin took little time, given her few possessions, but making it feel like home was another matter. The women of the town proved incredibly generous, bringing furniture, linens, kitchenware, and decorative items to help a newcomer get established, as they put it. Tabitha began teaching immediately, taking over Mrs. Lawson's duties at the church. Her 22 students ranged in age from 6 to 16 and varied widely in their educational backgrounds. Some of the older boys had received only sporadic schooling, while a few of the younger children from more affluent families had been taught at home by parents or governesses. The challenge of teaching such a diverse group was both exhausting and exhilarating. Tabitha found herself drawing on every skill she'd acquired at Thornfield Academy while adapting her methods to suit her new environment. Unlike her previous position, where strict adherence to curriculum had been demanded, here she had freedom to tailor her teaching to her students' needs and interests. She quickly discovered that practical applications resonated best with her frontier pupils. Mathematics lessons using examples of ranch management or store inventory captured attention far more effectively than abstract problems. History came alive when connected to the westward expansion that had brought many of their families to Colorado Territory. Even literature took on new dimensions when she incorporated stories of frontier life alongside the classics. As she grew more comfortable in her role, Tabitha began to form friendships among the townspeople. Martha Simmons became a particularly close confidante, often inviting Tabitha for Sunday dinner and offering insights into community dynamics. Through Martha, she learned more about the town's history, its challenges, and its aspirations. "Riverbend's growing," Martha told her one evening as they washed dishes after dinner. "5 years ago, we were just a handful of buildings. Now look at us, a proper town with a church, businesses, and soon a real school." "What changed?" Tabitha asked. "Stability. The early days were rough, too many men, not enough families. But as the ranches and farms became established, wives and children followed, or men sent for mail-order brides." Martha cast a sly glance at Tabitha. "Speaking of which, have you heard from Adam Irving lately?" Tabitha nearly dropped the plate she was drying. "Adam? Why would you mention him specifically?" Martha's eyes twinkled. "Because he's been in town 3 times in the past 2 weeks, when normally we're lucky to see him once a month. And he always finds a reason to pass by the church during school hours." "He does." Tabitha felt her cheeks warm. He's not fooling anyone, least of all me. I've known Adam Irving for 8 years, and I've never seen him show interest in a woman before. Until you." Tabitha's heart fluttered at Martha's words. It was true that Adam had appeared in Riverbend more frequently than she'd expected based on their earlier conversations. Each time, he'd made a point of seeing her stopping by the church to observe a lesson, inviting her to lunch, or simply pausing to chat when they encountered each other on the street. Their interactions had been friendly but proper, with none of the intensity she'd felt during their first days together. Still, she couldn't deny the pleasure his visits brought her, or the way her pulse quickened whenever she caught sight of him riding into town. "We're friends," Tabitha said carefully. "He helped me when I was in difficulty, and I'm grateful." Martha snorted. "Friends indeed, well, if that's what you want to call it." The following Saturday, Tabitha was tending to her small garden when she heard the now familiar sound of Adam's wagon approaching. She straightened, brushing soil from her hands and adjusting her sunbonnet as he brought the wagon to a stop outside her cabin. "Good morning," she called, unable to suppress her smile. Adam tipped his hat, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Morning, Miss Jones. Fine day for gardening." "It is, though I fear I'm something of a novice." He climbed down from the wagon and approached, surveying her nascent vegetable patch with an experienced eye. "Not bad for a beginner. Those tomato plants need more support, though." Before she could respond, he was kneeling beside the garden, using twine from his pocket to secure the young plants to the stakes she'd placed. Tabitha watched, captivated by the sure movements of his hands that could rope a steer or deliver a foal, yet were gentle enough for this delicate task. "There," he said, sitting back on his heels. "That should help them grow straight and strong. Thank you. Would you like some coffee?" "I just made a fresh pot." "I'd like that very much." Inside the cabin, Adam removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair in need of a trim. He looked around the small space with evident approval. "You've made it homey." Tabitha glanced around at the modest improvements she'd made: curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on the rocking chair, books arranged on shelves, and wildflowers in a jar on the table. "It's coming along. Though I admit I miss having a garden like yours at the ranch. The vegetables are practical, but I'd love some flowers too." Adam accepted the coffee she offered, their fingers brushing briefly during the exchange. "I might be able to help with that. Mrs. Wilkins has been dividing her perennials. She'd be pleased to send some your way." They settled at the small table, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows creating pools of gold on the wooden floor. "How is Mrs. Wilkins?" Tabitha asked. "I've thought of her often. She's well. Asks after you regularly." Adam hesitated. "She misses having another woman around the place. And the ranch, how are things there?" "Busy. We're preparing for the cattle drive next month, moving the herd to the summer pastures in the high country." "That sounds challenging." "It can be. But it's necessary for the cattle to have fresh grazing, and the lower pastures need time to recover." They talked easily for almost an hour. Adam sharing news of the ranch and nearby settlements, Tabitha telling him about her students and her growing comfort with life in Riverbend. It felt natural, this exchange between them, as if they'd known each other far longer than the few weeks of their acquaintance. Eventually, Adam glanced at the window, noting the sun's position. "I should be going. I promised Martha I'd help Henry move some heavy shelving at the store." "Of course." Tabitha rose, taking his empty cup. "Thank you for stopping by and for the garden help." At the door, Adam paused, seeming to wrestle with a decision. "Tabitha, I was wondering, there's a social at the church next Saturday evening, a dance to raise funds for the school furnishings. Would you consider attending with me?" Her heart skipped. A public outing together would signal to the town that they were. What? Courting? The thought both thrilled and frightened her. "I'd like that," she said softly. The smile that spread across his face was worth any risk. "I'll call for you at 7 then." After he left, Tabitha stood in the doorway watching his wagon until it disappeared around a bend in the road. A dance, with Adam Irving. The prospect filled her with a giddy anticipation she hadn't felt since girlhood. Martha would be insufferably smug, of course. But somehow, Tabitha couldn't bring herself to mind. The week leading up to the dance passed with excruciating slowness for Tabitha. She found herself distracted during lessons, her thoughts drifting to Adam and the upcoming social. What would people think? Would they approve? Did it matter if they didn't? More practically, she fretted over what to wear. Her wardrobe, never extensive, had been further reduced by her journey west. The few dresses she owned were serviceable for teaching but hardly suitable for a dance. Her dilemma must have shown on her face during Wednesday's lesson, for after the children departed, 14-year-old Emma Porter lingered behind. "Miss Jones, is everything all right? You seemed worried today." Tabitha smiled at the perceptive girl. "Just thinking about the dance on Saturday." "I'm afraid I don't have anything appropriate to wear." Emma's face brightened. "My mother could help. She's the best seamstress in town. She made my sister's wedding dress last year, and everyone said it was finer than anything from Denver." "That's very kind, but there's hardly time to make a new dress before Saturday." "Oh, but she has dresses already made. She keeps them for special orders. I'm sure she'd let you look at them." That afternoon, Tabitha found herself in the Porters' comfortable home, where Mrs. Porter, a cheerful woman with skilled hands and an artist's eye for color, ushered her into a small sewing room filled with fabrics and partially completed garments. "Emma tells me you need a dress for the social," Mrs. Porter said warmly. "Let's see what we have." To Tabitha's amazement, Mrs. Porter produced several beautiful dresses in various stages of completion. "These are samples I make to show customers what I can do. They're standard sizes, but I can adjust them quickly if needed." One dress in particular caught Tabitha's eye, a gown of deep blue silk with delicate embroidery at the bodice and sleeves. The color reminded her of the Colorado sky at dusk. "It's beautiful," she breathed, touching the fabric reverently. Mrs. Porter beamed. "Try it on. I think it would suit you perfectly." The dress fit as if made for her, needing only minor adjustments to the hemline and waist. When Tabitha gazed at her reflection in Mrs. Porter's mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The rich color brought out the gold in her brown eyes and complemented her auburn hair, while the elegant cut of the bodice accentuated her slender figure. "You look lovely, Miss Jones," Emma said admiringly. "Mr. Irving will be speechless." Tabitha blushed at the girl's forthright comment. News of her planned attendance with Adam had clearly spread through town already. "How much do I owe you, Mrs. Porter?" she asked, reluctantly changing back into her everyday dress. The seamstress named a sum that, while fair for such fine work, was more than Tabitha could comfortably afford on her teacher's salary. Seeing her hesitation, Mrs. Porter added quickly, "Or perhaps we could arrange an exchange. Emma tells me you studied literature extensively. She's very keen on poetry, but I'm afraid my education in that area is limited. Perhaps some private lessons for her." Relief washed over Tabitha. "I'd be delighted to tutor Emma. She shows remarkable aptitude for language." The arrangement settled, Tabitha left with the promise that the adjusted dress would be delivered on Saturday morning. As she walked back to her cabin, she found herself smiling at the unexpected kindness of her new neighbors. In Boston, such personal arrangements would have been unusual, but here in Riverbend, the community functioned as an extended family, with members supporting one another through a web of mutual assistance. Saturday dawned clear and promising, with the kind of crystalline blue sky that seemed unique to Colorado. Tabitha spent the morning cleaning her cabin thoroughly, then washed her hair and allowed it to dry in the sun as she prepared a simple lunch. The dress arrived as promised, along with a small package containing a pair of delicate lace gloves, a gift from Emma, Mrs. Porter's note explained. As evening approached, Tabitha bathed using the lavender-scented soap she'd purchased as a rare indulgence, then dressed with care. She arranged her hair in a more elaborate style than usual, with soft curls framing her face and the rest pinned up in a graceful knot. A touch of rose water at her wrists and throat completed her preparations. At precisely 7 o'clock, a knock sounded at her door. Taking a deep breath to calm her fluttering nerves, Tabitha opened it to find Adam standing on her small porch, hat in hand. The sight of him momentarily robbed her of speech. Gone was the rancher in work clothes. In his place stood a gentleman in a well-tailored dark suit, crisp white shirt, and polished boots. His hair was freshly cut, his face clean-shaven, revealing the strong line of his jaw and the surprising softness of his lips. Adam, for his part, seemed equally struck. His eyes widened as they took in her appearance, lingering appreciatively on the blue silk dress before returning to her face. "Tabitha," he said, his voice lower than usual, "you look beautiful." She felt a blush warm her cheeks. "Thank you, you're quite handsome yourself." He offered his arm with a small bow that somehow managed to be both playful and sincere. "Shall we?" The church was transformed for the occasion, with lanterns hanging from the rafters, wildflowers adorning every available surface, and the pews pushed back to create space for dancing. A small group of musicians, 2 fiddlers, a guitarist, and a man with a harmonica provided lively music that filled the room with sound. Nearly everyone in Riverbend seemed to be in attendance, from elderly couples who sat watching from chairs along the wall to children who darted between dancers in impromptu games. Tabitha recognized most faces now, having met many of her students' families during her weeks in town. Miss Jones. Mr. Irving. Martha Simmons bustled toward them, resplendent in a burgundy dress that complemented her ample figure. "How wonderful to see you both. Adam, I declare, I hardly recognized you all spruced up." Adam's hand rested lightly at the small of Tabitha's back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. "Evening, Martha. Henry talked me into buying this suit last year, figured it was finally time to wear it." Martha's knowing smile suggested she had her own theories about his motivation. "Well, you both look splendid. The school committee will be making a brief announcement about the building progress later, Miss Jones, but until then, enjoy yourselves." The evening unfolded like a dream. Adam proved to be an excellent dancer, guiding Tabitha through waltzes and reels with confident ease. During a lively Virginia reel, she caught glimpses of approval and speculation on the faces of the townspeople. By unspoken agreement, they had declared themselves a couple tonight, and Riverbend was taking note. During a break in the dancing, Adam brought her a cup of punch and led her to a quieter corner of the room. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, his eyes never leaving her face. "Very much." "I didn't know you could dance so well." A smile tugged at his lips. "There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Tabitha Jones." The promise in those words sent a shiver down her spine. "I look forward to learning." As the evening progressed, they danced and talked, occasionally joining conversations with other attendees but always returning to each other, as if pulled by an invisible thread. Tabitha found herself memorizing details: the exact shade of blue in Adam's eyes, the way his hand felt holding hers, the rich timbre of his laugh when something amused him. When Henry Simmons called for attention to make the promised announcement about the school, Adam kept his arm around Tabitha's waist as they stood listening. The gesture was not lost on the townspeople, whose glances and whispers suggested they found the development both surprising and generally welcome. "The school building will be completed by the end of next week," Henry announced proudly, "thanks to everyone's hard work and generous donations." Miss Jones will be able to move her classes there beginning Monday after next. Applause greeted this news, with several parents expressing particular gratitude to Tabitha for her patience in teaching under the church's cramped conditions. As the evening drew to a close, Adam asked for the final dance, a slow waltz that allowed them to move closer together than propriety might strictly allow. His hand at her waist was warm and steady, his steps perfectly matched to hers. "I haven't danced like this in years," he admitted quietly. "Not since before the war. You haven't forgotten how," she assured him, his gaze held hers. "Some things once learned stay with you forever." The walk back to Tabitha's cabin was peaceful, the night air cool but not cold, the stars brilliant overhead. They moved slowly, neither seeming eager for the evening to end. At her door, Adam took both her hands in his. "Thank you for accompanying me tonight. I can't remember when I've enjoyed an evening more." "Nor can I," she admitted. He studied her face in the moonlight, his expression serious. "Tabitha, I need to tell you something. I'm leaving tomorrow for the cattle drive. I'll be gone for nearly 3 weeks." Disappointment washed over her. "So soon?" "I've delayed as long as I could, but the cattle need to move to higher pasture, and the other ranchers are waiting on me." He squeezed her hands gently. "I wanted you to know that I'll be thinking of you every day, and when I return." He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear in his eyes, in the way he stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "When you return," she prompted softly. "When I return, I'd like to court you properly, if you're amenable." Joy bloomed in her chest, bright and warm. "I'm very amenable, Adam Irving." His smile was slow and sweet. "May I kiss you good night, Miss Jones?" In answer, Tabitha rose on tiptoe, her hands coming to rest lightly on his shoulders. Adam's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as his lips met hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. After a moment's hesitation, she responded, her fingers curling into the fabric of his jacket as the kiss deepened, becoming something more insistent, more promising. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their faces flushed despite the cool night air. "I should go," Adam said reluctantly, his hands still at her waist, "before I forget myself entirely." Tabitha nodded, though every part of her protested the separation. "Be safe on your journey." "I will." He brushed a stray curl from her face, his touch lingering. "Good night, Tabitha." "Good night, Adam." She watched from her doorway as he walked away, his tall figure gradually swallowed by the darkness. Only when he had disappeared completely did she close the door, leaning against it as her fingers touched her lips, still tingling from his kiss. 3 weeks, she thought. 3 weeks until he returned. It seemed an eternity. Yet as she prepared for bed that night, Tabitha found herself filled with a quiet certainty. Whatever the future held, whatever challenges lay ahead, she had found something precious here in this frontier town, not just a position or a home, but a man whose strength and kindness had captured her heart, almost from the moment he'd found her stranded at that lonely station. The weeks of Adam's absence proved both challenging and rewarding for Tabitha. The completion of the schoolhouse meant moving all her teaching materials and establishing new routines for her students. The building itself exceeded her expectations, spacious, well lit, with sturdy desks and a proper blackboard. The town had spared no expense, recognizing that education was essential for their children's futures. With the move came increased responsibilities. Henry Simmons, as head of the school committee, formally offered Tabitha a permanent position with a slight increase in salary. "We're impressed with your work," he told her. "The children are learning more than they ever have before." The offer required little consideration. Despite her initial misgivings about being stranded in Colorado territory, Tabitha had grown to love Riverbend and its people. What had begun as a temporary solution had evolved into a place where she could envision building a life. Throughout these busy days, thoughts of Adam were never far from her mind. She found herself watching the road from town, hoping for his early return. Martha, ever observant, noticed her distraction. "The cattle drive usually takes 3 full weeks," she said one afternoon as they worked together on curtains for the school windows. "Sometimes longer if the weather turns bad. I'm not worried," Tabitha said quickly. Too quickly, judging by Martha's knowing smile. "Of course you're not, dear." Adam Irving knows those mountains better than most. He'll be fine. Martha tied off a thread and reached for another length of fabric. Though I must say, I never thought I'd see the day when our confirmed bachelor rancher would be courting anyone, let alone a Boston schoolteacher. We're not exactly courting, Tabitha protested, though the memory of Adam's parting words suggested otherwise. Martha raised an eyebrow. The whole town saw you two at the dance, dear, and Adam doesn't do anything halfway. When he makes up his mind, he commits fully. The word sent a pleasant shiver through Tabitha. You've known him a long time, haven't you? Since he first came to these parts right after the war, he was different than harder, more closed off. The war left its mark on him, as it did on many men. Martha's expression grew thoughtful. He worked for other ranches at first, saving every penny. When he finally bought his own land, people said he was crazy. That patch was considered worthless, too far from water, too exposed to the elements. But he made it work, Tabitha said. That he did. Dug wells, built windbreaks, worked from sunup to sundown, never asked for help but accepted it graciously when offered. Gradually, people came to respect him. Martha smiled at some private memory. The first year he had a decent cattle sale, he paid off every debt in full, then donated enough to the church to replace its leaking roof. That's the kind of man he is. As the second week of Adam's absence drew to a close, Tabitha found herself increasingly restless. Teaching occupied her days, but evenings in her small cabin seemed longer and lonelier than before. She took to walking through town after supper, ostensibly for exercise but really hoping for news of the cattle driver's return. It was during one such walk, as May gave way to June, that Tabitha encountered Sheriff Taylor outside his office. "Evening, Miss Jones," he greeted her, tipping his hat. "Out for your constitutional?" "Yes, it's such a lovely evening." The sheriff nodded, his weathered face thoughtful. "Just had word from a rider coming down from the high country. The cattle drives are heading back. Should start seeing the men return in the next day or two." Tabitha's heart leapt, though she tried to keep her expression composed. "That's good news. I know several families have been anxious for their men to return." Sheriff Taylor's eyes twinkled knowingly. "Including Adam Irving's people, I expect. Mrs. Wilkins has been in town twice this week, stocking up on supplies like she's expecting a royal visit." Heat rose in Tabitha's cheeks, but she smiled at the gentle teasing. News of her connection to Adam had clearly spread beyond Riverbend. The following day, Tabitha found concentration difficult as she taught her lessons. Every passing horse or wagon drew her eyes to the windows. Every opening door made her heart race. By the time she dismissed the children at 3 o'clock, her nerves were stretched taut with anticipation. She was arranging books on the shelf when a commotion outside caught her attention, the sound of multiple horses and men's voices raised in greeting. Moving to the window, she saw a group of riders entering town, dust-covered and weary but clearly in good spirits. Her eyes scanned the group anxiously, looking for Adam's familiar figure. He wasn't among them. Disappointment crashed over her, followed quickly by concern. Had something happened? Was he delayed for some reason? Injured, perhaps? Determined not to give in to worry, Tabitha finished her tasks and walked home, reminding herself that the sheriff had said the men would be returning over the course of several days. Adam might simply be among a later group. That evening, as she prepared a simple supper, a knock at her door startled her. Setting down the knife she'd been using to slice vegetables, she wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it, trying to temper her hopes. When she opened the door, Adam stood there, still in his riding clothes, his face bronzed from weeks in the sun, his eyes tired but bright as they found hers. "You're back," she breathed, joy washing over her in a dizzying wave. "I'm back," he confirmed, his voice rough with fatigue but warm with affection. Without hesitation, Tabitha stepped forward into his waiting arms. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair, his embrace conveying what words could not relief, longing, homecoming. When they finally separated, Tabitha noticed for the first time that Adam's clothes were travel-stained, his boots caked with mud. "You came straight here," she realized aloud, "before even going to the ranch." A smile tugged at his lips. "I had my priorities in order." "Come in," she invited, suddenly aware they were embracing on her doorstep in full view of anyone who might pass by. You must be exhausted. Have you eaten? Not since breakfast. He stepped inside, removing his hat. I should apologize for my appearance. I meant to clean up before calling on you, but you came straight here instead, she finished for him, touched beyond measure by the gesture. I'm glad you did. She insisted he sit while she finished preparing supper, adding more vegetables to the pot to stretch the meal for two. Adam watched her move around the small kitchen, his expression a mixture of tenderness and something deeper, more elemental. How was the cattle drive? She asked, setting plates on the table. Successful. We got the herd to the summer pastures with minimal losses. Weather cooperated for the most part. He accepted the coffee she offered gratefully. And you, how are you settling into the new schoolhouse? They talked easily through supper, exchanging news and observations about their weeks apart. Adam described the beauty of the high mountain meadows, the challenges of moving cattle through difficult terrain, the camaraderie of the men who worked together on the drive. Tabitha told him about her students' progress, the completion of the school building, the increasing acceptance she felt from the townspeople. As they finished eating, Adam's expression grew more serious. I've been thinking about you every day, he admitted, about what I said before I left. Tabitha's heart quickened. About courting me properly? Yes, he reached across the table to take her hand. I meant it, Tabitha. These past weeks have only confirmed what I already knew. My feelings for you are serious. I want to court you with the intention of a future together, if you'll have me. The directness of his declaration took her breath away. In Boston, courtship followed strict protocols, with intentions often veiled behind propriety and social conventions. Adam's straightforward approach was both startling and refreshing. I've been thinking about you too, she confessed, her fingers tightening around his, about us, what we might become to each other. Hope flared in his eyes. And I would very much like to be courted by you, Adam Irving, with all that implies for our future. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, gradual, then brilliant in its intensity. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth spiraling through her. I should go, he said reluctantly. Mrs. Wilkins will be waiting up, and I've been in the saddle since dawn. At the door, he paused, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. May I call on you tomorrow evening, properly dressed this time? I'd like that. She leaned into his touch, though I don't mind the trail dust. It's part of who you are. Adam's expression softened. You're something special, Tabitha Jones. Do you know that? Before she could respond, he bent to kiss her, a tender, lingering kiss that held both promise and restraint. When they parted, his eyes were darker, his breathing uneven. Until tomorrow, he murmured. Until tomorrow, she echoed. That night, as Tabitha prepared for bed, she found herself filled with a quiet joy that seemed to illuminate her from within. The journey that had begun with a mistake being left at the wrong station had led her to exactly where she was meant to be. To Adam, to Riverbend, to a life she could never have imagined in Boston but now couldn't imagine living without. Summer unfurled across the Colorado Territory, in a tapestry of vivid colors and intense sensations, the brilliant blue of cloudless skies, the golden green of sun-drenched prairie grass, the sweet fragrance of wildflowers that carpeted the foothills. For Tabitha, it was a season of discovery, both of the land and of the man who was courting her with such dedicated attention. True to his word, Adam called on her the evening after his return, dressed in clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing, bearing a bouquet of wildflowers and an invitation to Sunday dinner at the ranch. Mrs. Wilkins is eager to see you again, he explained. And I thought you might enjoy a day away from town. The visit to the Double I Ranch rekindled Tabitha's appreciation for the property's beauty and Adam's achievements in building it. Mrs. Wilkins welcomed her like a long-lost daughter, enveloping her in a warm embrace that smelled of baking bread and herbal sachets. About time he brought you back, the housekeeper declared, shooting Adam a meaningful look. Been talking about you non-stop since he returned from the cattle drive. Mrs. Wilkins, Adam protested, a flush creeping up his neck. Well, it's true. Do you think Miss Jones will like this? I wonder if Miss Jones would prefer that like a lovesick schoolboy he's been. Tabitha bit back a smile at Adam's discomfort. finding his bashfulness endearing. After a sumptuous dinner that showcased Mrs. Wilkins' considerable culinary skills, Adam suggested a ride to show Tabitha more of the ranch. They saddled Daisy for her and a sturdy gelding for Adam, then set off across the rolling landscape. "I've missed this," Tabitha admitted as they rode side by side. The open space, the quiet. Adam glanced at her. "Do you find town life confining?" "Not exactly. I love my students and the townspeople have been wonderfully welcoming, but there's something about this." She gestured to the vast panorama around them. "It feels like freedom." His expression warmed. "That's exactly how I've always felt about it." They rode to a hilltop where a single large cottonwood tree provided shade, its leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Dismounting, Adam helped Tabitha down, his hands lingering at her waist slightly longer than necessary. "This is my thinking spot," he said, leading her to the tree. "When I first bought this land, I'd come up here to plan where to dig wells, where to build, which areas to fence first." They sat beneath the tree's spreading branches, looking out over the ranch and the distant mountains beyond. Adam pointed out landmarks, explaining his plans for future improvements, additional grazing areas, an expanded orchard, perhaps even a larger house someday. "You've accomplished so much already," Tabitha said admiringly. "Most men would be satisfied." Adam shrugged, a hint of self-consciousness in the gesture. "I've always believed in building for the future, not just the present." As the summer progressed, Adam's courtship continued with a mixture of frontier practicality and surprising romanticism. He escorted Tabitha to church every Sunday, followed by dinner either at the ranch or with friends in town. On Wednesday evenings, he would arrive at her cabin with books borrowed from his own substantial library, having noted her wistful comments about missing access to literature. Together, they explored the countryside around Riverbend, picnicking by the river, riding to scenic viewpoints, or simply walking through town in the cool of the evening, talking about everything and nothing. With each encounter, Tabitha's feelings for Adam deepened, evolving from attraction and admiration to something she could only describe as love. It was during one such evening walk in late June, as they strolled along the riverbank with the setting sun painting the water in hues of gold and crimson, that Adam first spoke the words she'd been hoping to hear. "I love you, Tabitha," he said simply, pausing to turn and face her. "I think I've loved you since I found you standing alone at that station, looking so lost and yet so determined." Joy surged through her, bright and overwhelming. "I love you too, Adam. I never expected to find someone like you, especially not in such circumstances, but I'm grateful every day for whatever twist of fate brought me to Cottonwood Station instead of Silverdale." His smile was tender as he drew her into his arms. "So am I." Their kiss was deeper than previous ones, freighted with acknowledged love and growing desire. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their faces flushed with more than just the warmth of the summer evening. "Marry me," Adam said suddenly, his eyes intense on hers. "Not immediately, I know we haven't known each other long by Eastern standards, but soon, when you're ready." Tabitha's heart soared at the proposal, even as her practical mind registered the considerations. "What about my teaching position? The school year will be starting in September." "I would never ask you to give up teaching if it brings you joy," Adam assured her. "The ranch isn't so far from town that you couldn't continue, at least until—" He hesitated. "Until," she prompted, already suspecting his meaning. A flush crept up his neck. "Until we start a family, perhaps." "If that's what you want." The image of their children running through the meadows of the Double I Ranch filled Tabitha with unexpected longing. "I would like that very much. Someday." Relief and happiness transformed Adam's face. "Is that a yes, then?" "Yes," Tabitha said, certainty filling her. "Yes, I'll marry you, Adam Irving." The news of their engagement spread through Riverbend with the speed that only small-town gossip can achieve. By noon the following day, Tabitha had received congratulations from nearly everyone she encountered, along with knowing smiles that suggested many had anticipated this development. "Told you so," Martha Simmons said smugly when Tabitha stopped by the general store. "I knew from the moment I saw you two together at the dance." Some things are just meant to be. The school committee, after expressing initial concern about losing their teacher, proved supportive when assured that Tabitha intended to complete the coming school year. "We'll need to find a replacement eventually," Henry Simmons acknowledged, "but we've got time, and who knows? Perhaps by then, Riverbend will have grown enough to need 2 teachers." July brought intense heat and occasional violent thunderstorms that rolled across the prairie with dramatic displays of lightning and sudden, drenching rain. Despite the weather, work continued at both the school and the ranch, with Adam making improvements to the house in preparation for Tabitha's eventual arrival as his wife. "Mrs. Wilkins insists we need a larger kitchen," he told Tabitha one evening as they sat on her cabin's small porch, watching lightning illuminate the distant mountains, "and more bookcases for your collection." "My collection consists of exactly 12 books, Tabitha reminded him with a laugh. "For now, but I've seen how you look at my library. I suspect it won't stay small for long." They had tentatively set their wedding date for December, after the fall term ended and before the worst of winter weather made travel difficult. It would be a simple ceremony at the church, followed by a celebration at the ranch for friends and neighbors. December seems very far away, Tabitha admitted one Sunday afternoon as they rode back to town after dinner at the ranch. Adam glanced at her, his expression softening. "It does to me too, but I want to do this properly. Give you time to be certain, to prepare." "I am certain," she assured him. "More certain than I've ever been about anything." His smile held a hint of mischief. "Well, if you're that certain, perhaps we could move the date forward a bit. Say October, after harvest but before the heavy snows." The suggestion filled Tabitha with unexpected eagerness. October would be lovely. The autumn colors would be beautiful for a wedding. As summer began to wane, bringing cooler nights and the first hints of gold to the cottonwood leaves, Tabitha found herself increasingly dividing her time between preparations for the new school year and for her wedding. Martha organized a sewing circle to help create her trousseau, while Mrs. Wilkins oversaw improvements to the ranch house with an enthusiasm that suggested she'd been waiting years for this occasion. Adam, for his part, seemed to grow more attentive with each passing day, his love expressed in both words and deeds. A flower left on her desk at the schoolhouse, a book of poetry appearing on her doorstep, practical gifts like a new saddle for Daisy, now officially hers, or shelves installed in her cabin. One evening in early September, as they walked back to her cabin after a community dinner at the church, Adam seemed unusually thoughtful, almost distracted. "Is everything all right?" Tabitha asked, concerned by his uncharacteristic quietness. "Just thinking," he replied, squeezing her hand reassuringly, "about how much has changed since May, since I found you at that station." "Good changes, I hope." He stopped walking to face her fully, his expression serious in the fading light. "The best changes, Tabitha. You've brought joy back into my life in ways I hadn't even realized were missing." Touched by his words, she reached up to touch his face. "You've done the same for me. When I think about how close I came to marrying Gerald Crawford." She shuddered slightly. "It would have been a disaster." "His loss, my gain," Adam said simply, turning to kiss her palm. At her cabin door, their goodnight kiss was longer and more passionate than usual, hinting at the desire that simmered beneath their respectful courtship. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily, their eyes dark with shared longing. "October can't come soon enough," Adam murmured, his forehead resting against hers. 6 more weeks, Tabitha reminded him, her voice not entirely steady. He chuckled, the sound low and warm. "I'm counting the days, Miss Jones. Literally counting." As September progressed, bringing the start of the school year and increasingly busy days for both of them, Tabitha found herself caught up in a whirlwind of activity. Her 28 students, 6 more than last term, required all her energy and creativity during the day, while evenings and weekends were filled with wedding preparations and time with Adam. The community embraced the upcoming wedding with characteristic enthusiasm. Offers of help poured in, everything from food for the reception to decorations for the church to music for the ceremony. "It's becoming quite an event," Tabitha remarked to Martha one afternoon as they discussed floral arrangements. "I hope Adam doesn't mind," Martha laughed. Adam Irving might value his privacy, but he also understands community. Besides, this is the biggest celebration Riverbend's had in years. People need something joyful to look forward to before winter sets in. The observation gave Tabitha a new appreciation for the significance of their wedding beyond its personal meaning. In this frontier town, where life could be harsh and isolation a constant challenge, communal celebrations took on added importance, binding people together, creating shared memories, affirming the continuity of life despite hardships. As October approached, bringing with it the spectacular golds and reds of autumn, an unexpected letter arrived for Tabitha, postmarked from Nevada and addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Opening it with curiosity, she was astonished to see Gerald Crawford's signature at the bottom. The letter was brief, but revealing. Crawford apologized for not informing her of his move from Silverdale, explaining that a sudden opportunity in the Nevada silver mines had prompted his hasty departure. He had intended to send for her once established, but had instead met and married a widow with 2 children, rendering their arrangement moot. "I trust this letter finds you well and settled elsewhere," he concluded. "A mutual acquaintance informed me of the confusion regarding your arrival, for which I offer sincere regrets." Tabitha sat for a long time after reading the letter, emotions swirling through her relief that the matter was officially resolved, amusement at the irony of the situation, and overwhelming gratitude that fate had intervened so decisively in her life. That evening, she showed the letter to Adam as they sat before the fireplace in his ranch house, the first autumn chill having prompted Mrs. Wilkins to light a small fire. Adam read it carefully, his expression inscrutable. When he finished, he folded the paper deliberately and handed it back to her. "Are you all right?" he asked, studying her face. "More than all right," she assured him. "It's strange to think how differently things might have turned out, but I can't imagine being happier than I am now with you." The tension in his shoulders eased. "I was half afraid you might regret the path not taken." "Never." She moved to sit beside him on the sofa, taking his hand in hers. Gerald Crawford was a desperate choice made in difficult circumstances. "You, Adam Irving, are the man I choose freely, with my whole heart." The kiss they shared was tender at first, then increasingly urgent, fueled by the certainty of their feelings and the nearness of their wedding. When they finally broke apart, Adam's eyes were dark with desire, his breathing uneven. 3 more weeks, he murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. 3 weeks, she agreed, her own voice husky with emotion. Those final weeks passed in a blur of activity and anticipation. Tabitha's wedding dress, a creation of ivory silk with delicate lace trim, lovingly sewn by Mrs. Porter, and the ladies of the sewing circle, was finished and fitted. The church was prepared, with autumn leaves and late-blooming flowers arranged artfully throughout the space. Food for the reception was planned down to the last detail, with contributions promised from nearly every household in Riverbend. 2 days before the wedding, as Tabitha was reviewing lessons for the substitute teacher who would take over during her week-long honeymoon, a wagon arrived from Denver carrying a surprise, a small upright piano, delivered to the church as a wedding gift from the entire community. "We all contributed," Martha explained when Tabitha expressed overwhelming gratitude. "Adam mentioned once that you played and how much you missed having an instrument. It's for the church officially, but everyone knows it's really for you." The gesture brought tears to Tabitha's eyes. "I don't know what to say. It's too generous." "Nonsense," Martha declared. "You've given this town something precious, not just education for our children, but hope. A reminder that refinement and culture can flourish even here on the frontier." The wedding day dawned clear and cool, with a sky of such perfect blue it seemed painted for the occasion. Tabitha woke early, watching the sunrise from her cabin window, a sense of peaceful certainty filling her. This was right. This was meant to be. Martha and several other women arrived to help her prepare, bringing breakfast, flowers for her hair, and the traditional something borrowed a lace handkerchief from Mrs. Wilkins. Something blue, a ribbon sewn into her petticoat. Something old, a cameo that had belonged to Martha's mother, and something new, delicate pearl earrings, a gift from Adam delivered that morning. The ceremony itself was simple but deeply moving. As Tabitha walked down the aisle on Henry Simmons' arm, he having volunteered to stand in for her absent father, her eyes found Adam waiting at the altar, his expression a mixture of awe and joy that made her heart swell. Their vows, spoken in clear, steady voices that carried throughout the packed church, were traditional but invested with profound personal meaning. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, drawing appreciative murmurs and a few good-natured cheers from the congregation. The celebration at the Double I Ranch continued well into the evening, with music, dancing, abundant food, and flowing champagne, ordered specially from Denver for the occasion. Tabitha, moving among their guests as Mrs. Irving for the first time, felt as though she were floating, buoyed by happiness, and the genuine goodwill that surrounded them. As the party began to wind down, with younger children falling asleep in their parents' arms and older couples drifting toward their wagons, Adam found her standing on the porch, watching the sunset paint the landscape in fiery hues. "Happy, Mrs. Irving?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "It was a perfect day." "And it's not over yet," he reminded her, his voice dropping to a more intimate register that sent anticipatory shivers down her spine. Later, in the privacy of their bedroom now truly theirs, with Tabitha's books on the shelves and her clothing in the wardrobe, Adam proved that his gentlemanly restraint during their courtship had concealed a passion equal to her own. Their coming together as husband and wife was both tender and ardent, a culmination of the love that had grown between them since that fateful day at Cottonwood Station. As they lay in each other's arms afterward, the room silvered by moonlight filtering through the curtains, Tabitha marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. "I was thinking," Adam said softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder, "about what I said when I found you at the station. That I might be at the right place after all," she remembered, smiling at the memory. "Yes." He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her properly, his expression serious despite the intimacy of their position. "I had no idea then how right I would be, how perfectly you would fit into my life, into this place." Tabitha reached up to touch his face, overwhelmed by the love she felt for this man who had found her when she was lost in more ways than one. "It was the right place," she agreed softly. "The only place I want to be. With you." 5 years later, on a bright spring morning much like the one when she'd first arrived in Colorado, Tabitha Irving stood on the porch of the Double I Ranch, watching as Adam taught their 4-year-old son, Andrew, to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter, Eliza, sat on a blanket nearby, meticulously arranging a collection of smooth stones she'd gathered from the stream. The ranch had prospered along with their family. The house had been expanded to accommodate their growing household, the orchards had matured, and the cattle herd had increased substantially. Adam's reputation as one of the territory's most successful ranchers had spread, bringing offers of partnership and investment that they carefully considered together. Tabitha had continued teaching until Andrew's birth, then reluctantly stepped away from her formal position. She hadn't abandoned education entirely, however. Once a week, she hosted a reading circle for neighboring ranch children who lived too far from town to attend school regularly. The piano, moved from the church to the ranch after a larger instrument was donated for the growing congregation, provided musical education as well. Mrs. Wilkins remained with them, now officially retired from housekeeping duties, but still very much the heart of the household. She doted on the children shamelessly, telling anyone who would listen that they were the most perfect creatures ever to grace the territory. Life wasn't without its challenges. The frontier remained a demanding place, with harsh winters, unpredictable weather, occasional conflicts with neighboring territories, and the constant work required to maintain a successful ranch. But these challenges were met together, with the strength of partnership and the support of the community they'd helped to build. As Tabitha watched, Adam lifted Andrew from the pony and set him on his feet, ruffling the boy's hair the same rich brown as his father's with evident pride. Looking up, he caught Tabitha's eye and smiled, that same warm smile that had first captured her heart at Cottonwood Station. In that moment, surrounded by the family and home they had created together, Tabitha felt a profound sense of gratitude for the series of events that had brought her here: the loss of her teaching position in Boston, the desperate decision to become a mail-order bride, the mix-up that had left her at the wrong station. What had seemed like disasters at the time had led her to exactly where she was meant to be, not with Gerald Crawford in Silverdale, but with Adam Irving on the Double I Ranch. To a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined that day, when a lonely whistle had echoed across the vast prairie, and a train had pulled away, leaving her standing amid a cloud of settling dust. She had been at the right place after all. And every day since had only confirmed how right it truly was.